I never questioned why Sarah left the house every Thursday at exactly 2 in the afternoon. For 10 years of marriage, she would kiss my cheek, grab her purse, and say she had errands to run. 3 hours later, she would return with groceries, and that peaceful smile I fell in love with. I trusted her completely. Now, sitting in our empty kitchen 3 days after her funeral, I stare at a stack of bank statements I found hidden in her sewing box. My hands tremble as I read the numbers. Every Thursday for a decade, someone deposited $2,000 into an account I never knew existed. My quiet librarian wife had secrets, and discovering them is about to destroy everything I thought I knew about our life together. The morning sun cast long shadows across our hardwood floors as I spread the bank statements across the kitchen table. Each statement showed the same pattern: weekly deposits of exactly $2,000 every Thursday for the past 10 years. The account balance made my stomach drop. $1,043,600. Sarah worked part-time at the Riverside Public Library, earning maybe $15 an hour. Her entire yearly salary couldn't cover even 3 months of these deposits. My insurance adjuster position paid decent money, but nothing close to this level of cash flow. Where had this money come from? I called in sick to work and drove straight to First National Bank. The building stood downtown, an imposing brick structure with marble columns that had intimidated me since childhood. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I approached the customer service desk. "I need to speak with someone about my late wife's account," I told the receptionist, a young woman with bright red hair and too much makeup. She directed me to Patricia Winters, the branch manager. Patricia was a woman in her late 40s with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her office smelled like coffee and leather, with diplomas covering one wall and family photos covering another. "Mr. Morrison, I'm so sorry for your loss," Patricia said, gesturing for me to sit in the chair across from her mahogany desk. "Sarah was one of our most reliable customers. Every Thursday like clockwork." "That's what I want to understand," I said, placing the statements on her desk. "These deposits. I never knew about this account." Patricia's expression grew cautious. "I'm not sure how much I can discuss without proper authorization. She was my wife. We were married 10 years. "Of course, but banking regulations require certain procedures." She pulled Sarah's file from a cabinet. "However, I can tell you that all deposits were legitimate cash transactions. Sarah always came in personally to make them. There's $2,000 every week." "That's correct. Usually around 2:15 in the afternoon. Very punctual woman." Patricia flipped through pages. "She always came with her business partner." My heart stopped. Business partner. A gentleman named Douglas Reed. They seemed to have quite a successful partnership. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. "What kind of business?" Patricia hesitated. "I assumed you knew." She never mentioned it. "No. Sarah worked at the library. That was her only job." "Oh my." Patricia closed the file. "Perhaps you should speak with Mr. Reed directly. I have his business card here." She handed me a cream-colored card with black lettering. "Reed & Associates Private Investigations. Douglas Reed, licensed private investigator." Below his name, in smaller print, "Sarah Morrison, Associate Investigator." The card slipped from my fingers and fluttered to the floor. My wife, my Sarah, who spent her evenings reading romance novels and tending her herb garden, was a private investigator. The woman who cried during sad movies and rescued injured birds from our patio had been living a double life I never suspected. "Mr. Morrison, are you all right?" I picked up the card with shaking hands. "Do you have their office address?" "It's on the card, Maple Street above the antique shop." I stumbled out of the bank in a daze. Our entire marriage felt like a lie. Every Thursday when Sarah kissed me goodbye and said she had errands, she was actually going to work at a detective agency. Every evening when she came home with groceries and asked about my day, she had spent hours investigating other people's secrets while keeping her own. The drive across town passed in a blur. I parked outside a 2-story brick building with "Hartwell Antiques" painted on the ground floor window. A narrow staircase led to a second-floor door marked "Reed and Associates." My legs felt heavy as I climbed those stairs. Each step took me further from the life I thought I knew and closer to a truth I wasn't sure I wanted to face. Sarah's death had already shattered my world. Now I was about to discover that the woman I grieved for might have been a stranger. I stood outside that door for 5 full minutes, staring at my wife's name painted in gold lettering on the frosted glass. Finally, I turned the handle and stepped inside. The office was smaller than I expected, with 2 desks facing each other across a narrow room. Afternoon sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating file cabinets lining the walls. A man in his 50s sat behind the larger desk, his gray hair neatly combed and his blue shirt wrinkled from a long day. When he looked up, his weathered face showed genuine surprise. "You must be Conway," he said, standing and extending his hand. "I'm Douglas Reed. I was planning to call you this week." His handshake was firm, calloused from years of work I could only guess at. Behind him, Sarah's desk sat exactly as she must have left it. A small cactus plant, a coffee mug with a library logo, and a framed photo of us from our honeymoon in Colorado. "Why didn't I know about this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Douglas motioned for me to sit in the chair beside Sarah's desk. "She wanted to tell you, especially these last few months, but the case she was working on made it too dangerous." "What case? What are you talking about?" Douglas pulled a thick manila folder from a locked drawer. "Sarah came to me 8 years ago. She'd been volunteering at the library's literacy program helping adults learn to read. One of her students was a woman whose husband was beating her. The woman was afraid to leave because she thought he'd find her. He opened the folder, revealing photographs of a middle-aged man entering various buildings. Sarah wanted to learn how to gather evidence so she could help the woman get a restraining order. She had this natural ability to make people trust her, to get them to open up about things they'd never tell anyone else. So you taught her to be a detective?" "I taught her the technical skills. The instincts were all hers." Douglas smiled sadly. "She was the most naturally gifted investigator I've ever worked with. People would confess their deepest secrets to Sarah within minutes of meeting her." I stared at the photo of us on her desk. We were laughing arms around each other with mountain peaks in the background. I remembered that day, perfectly. We had hiked 6 miles to a hidden lake, and I had proposed to her right there beside the water. She said yes before I even finished asking the question. "What kind of cases did you work on?" "Cheating spouse investigations, missing persons, insurance fraud, background checks for custody battles." Sarah specialized in the delicate cases, situations where people needed someone they could trust with their pain. Douglas pulled out another file, this one much thicker. "We were very successful. Sarah's ability to connect with people made our success rate higher than most agencies in the state." I felt sick. Every Thursday for 8 years, my wife had been interrogating cheating husbands and tracking down missing teenagers while I thought she was browsing the grocery store. Why didn't she tell me? Client confidentiality was paramount to Sarah. She took that responsibility seriously. Plus, some of the people we investigated were dangerous. She didn't want to put you at risk. "Put me at risk from what?" Douglas hesitated, then pulled out a final folder. This one had my name written across the tab in Sarah's careful handwriting. Inside was a photograph of me walking into my office building. My blood turned to ice. She was investigating me. Not exactly. Douglas's expression grew grim. "Someone hired us to investigate you. Sarah took the case because she wanted to control the investigation to protect you from whoever was trying to dig into your life." The room spun around me. Not only had Sarah been lying to me for 8 years, but she had actually been spying on me. My grief transformed into anger, hot and sharp in my chest. "Who hired you to investigate me?" "A lawyer named Victoria Hartwell. She claimed to be concerned about some irregularities in your financial situation." Victoria Hartwell. The name hit me like a physical blow. My college girlfriend, the one who had broken my heart when she chose Harvard Law School over staying in Ohio with me. I hadn't spoken to her in 15 years. "Victoria suspected you were involved in some kind of illegal activity," Douglas continued. Your lifestyle had improved significantly over the past year. New car, house renovations, expensive clothes. She wanted to know where the money was coming from. And what did Sarah find? Douglas opened the file and pulled out a thick report in Sarah's handwriting. She found that you were completely innocent of any wrongdoing. But she also discovered something else. Someone has been using your employee identification to commit insurance fraud. You're being set up to take the fall for a very sophisticated embezzlement scheme. The words hit me like hammer blows. Sarah hadn't been betraying me. She had been protecting me from a crime I didn't even know was being committed in my name. My anger collapsed into a crushing weight of regret and loss. Who's framing me? Douglas closed the file. Your boss, Raymond Fletcher. Sarah spent 6 months documenting his activities. He's been embezzling money from insurance claims and using your credentials to cover his tracks. She estimated he's stolen over $3 million. I thought about Fletcher, a heavy-set man in his early 60s who had always seemed friendly enough. He had hired me straight out of college and promoted me twice. The idea that he was systematically destroying my life while shaking my hand every morning was incomprehensible. Sarah was building a case against him, Douglas continued. She had recorded conversations, financial documents, testimony from other employees he was blackmailing into silence. She was going to present everything to the FBI next week. Next week? The insurance company is conducting a mandatory audit starting Monday morning. Fletcher planned to trigger the investigation that would make you the primary suspect, then disappear with the stolen money. Sarah was racing to expose him before he could complete the frame-up. I stared at my wife's empty chair, imagining her sitting there late into the night, working to save me from a trap I never saw coming. She had died trying to protect me, and I had spent the last 3 days questioning whether I had ever really known her. There's something else, Douglas said quietly. The reason Victoria Hartwell hired us in the first place. She wasn't trying to hurt you. She was trying to save you. Douglas unlocked another file cabinet and withdrew a folder marked Confidential Client Communications. His hands moved carefully as if the papers inside contained explosives rather than information. Victoria Hartwell received an anonymous letter 6 months ago, he said, placing a photocopy in front of me. Someone warned her that you were in danger, that corrupt individuals at your company were planning to frame you for financial crimes. I read the letter written in block letters on plain white paper. Conway Morrison is an innocent man being set up by criminals at Midwest Insurance Associates. If you care about him, investigate Raymond Fletcher immediately. Time is running out. The anonymous tipster, Douglas continued, was Sarah herself. My world tilted again. Sarah sent this to Victoria. She discovered the early stages of Fletcher's scheme during routine background research for another case. When she realized you were the target, she panicked. She couldn't tell you directly because Fletcher had the company under surveillance. She couldn't go to the police because she didn't have enough evidence yet. So she reached out to the one person she knew would move heaven and earth to protect you. Victoria. Sarah researched your college girlfriend extensively. Victoria had become one of the most successful criminal defense attorneys in Chicago. She specialized in corporate fraud cases. Sarah knew that if anyone could help you, it would be Victoria. Douglas opened Sarah's investigation file on me. Page after page of meticulous documentation filled the folder. Photos of me entering and leaving work, copies of my financial records interviews with my co-workers. But as I read through Sarah's notes, I realized this wasn't surveillance, it was protection. Look at the dates, Douglas said. Sarah documented every day Fletcher interacted with you, every time he accessed your computer, every meeting he scheduled when you weren't present. She was building a timeline of when and how he planted evidence to frame you. Sarah's handwriting filled the margins with observations. C worked late Tuesday, office empty except for Fletcher. Security cameras show Fletcher at C's desk for 27 minutes. And Fletcher scheduled C for field inspection. Same day fraudulent claim was processed using C's login. She knew exactly what Fletcher was doing, I said. More than that, she figured out why he was doing it. Douglas pulled out a newspaper clipping from 15 years ago. The headline read, "Local teen dies in highway accident." The photo showed a young woman with dark hair and a bright smile. Emma Fletcher. I recognized her immediately, even though I had tried to forget that face for over a decade. Fletcher's daughter, I whispered. Your high school girlfriend, the one who died in a car accident the night after you broke up with her. The memories came flooding back. Emma had been 17 a year younger than me. We had dated for 6 months during my senior year. She was sweet and funny, but I was heading to college and felt we were too young for anything serious. I had broken up with her gently, or so I thought, the night before graduation. The next morning, Emma drove her car off Highway 33 into Miller's Creek. The police said she fell asleep at the wheel, but everyone at school whispered that she was heartbroken over our breakup. I carried that guilt for years. Fletcher blamed me for Emma's death, I said. According to Sarah's psychological profile, Fletcher has been planning this revenge for 15 years. He specifically recruited you for his company not because of your qualifications, but because he wanted you close enough to destroy. Douglas showed me Sarah's analysis of Fletcher's behavior patterns. She had documented his mood changes, his drinking habits, his obsessive comments about justice and retribution. The picture that emerged was of a man consumed by grief and rage, methodically planning to frame an innocent person for crimes that would destroy his life. Fletcher waited until you were settled, married, happy. He wanted to take away everything that mattered to you the way he believed you took away everything that mattered to him. I thought about Emma's funeral, how her father had stared at me across the church with such hatred I had to leave early. At 17, I thought his grief would fade with time. I never imagined it would fester into this elaborate scheme for revenge. Sarah discovered that Fletcher had been embezzling money for years, but he only started using your credentials to cover his tracks after you got married. He wanted to wait until you had something to lose. The cruelty of it took my breath away. Fletcher had attended my wedding, shaken my hand, wished Sarah and me a lifetime of happiness, all while planning to destroy us both. Sarah's final report concluded that Fletcher planned to trigger the audit the week after your 10th wedding anniversary. He wanted to mark the occasion by taking away your freedom, your reputation, and your future. Our 10th anniversary had been 2 weeks ago. Sarah had been unusually quiet that evening, distracted and sad, in a way I couldn't understand. Now I realized she knew what was coming. She knew Fletcher's timeline and was racing to stop him. The night she died, I said slowly, she was working late on this case, wasn't she? Douglas nodded. She had been putting in 18-hour days trying to gather the final pieces of evidence. She wanted to have an airtight case before approaching the authorities. What triggered her heart attacks? Douglas hesitated, then pulled out a medical report I hadn't seen before. The autopsy found traces of a stimulant in Sarah's system, something that could trigger cardiac arrhythmia in someone with an underlying heart condition. Someone drugged her. Sarah suspected Fletcher knew about her investigation. She had been extra careful the last few weeks, varying her routine, checking her car for tracking devices. But she continued meeting with witnesses and gathering evidence. The implication hit me like a sledgehammer. Fletcher hadn't just framed me for embezzlement. He had murdered my wife to stop her from exposing him. We can't prove Fletcher poisoned her, Douglas said quickly. But Sarah documented several occasions when he had access to her coffee at company events you both attended. My hands clenched into fists. The man who had destroyed my life piece by piece had also taken away the one person who could have saved me. Sarah died trying to protect me from a monster I trusted completely. What do we do now? I asked. Sarah left very specific instructions for what should happen if anything occurred to prevent her from completing the case. Douglas opened a sealed envelope marked Emergency Protocols. She wanted you to finish what she started. Inside the envelope was a key to a safety deposit box and a note in Sarah's handwriting. Conway, if you're reading this, then I've failed to protect you in time. Everything you need to clear your name and bring Fletcher to justice is in Box 471 at First National. Trust Douglas. Trust Victoria. Finish this fight for both of us. I love you always, Sarah. Looking at my wife's final message, I felt something shift inside me. The grief and confusion that had overwhelmed me since her death crystallized into cold, focused determination. Sarah had died fighting for me. Now it was my turn to fight for her. The safety deposit box contained Sarah's life's work, condensed into organized evidence that could destroy Raymond Fletcher completely. Douglas and I spread the contents across a table in the bank's private viewing room. Financial records showed the precise flow of embezzled funds from legitimate insurance claims into offshore accounts Fletcher controlled. Audio recordings captured Fletcher bribing witnesses and threatening employees who asked too many questions. Sarah was incredibly thorough. Douglas said, examining a folder marked Timeline of Fraudulent Activities. She documented every fraudulent claim, every forged signature, every instance of Fletcher using your employee credentials to authorize payments. The recordings were the most damning evidence. Sarah had somehow convinced Fletcher's accomplices to confess their roles in the scheme. A claims adjuster named Marcus Webb described how Fletcher forced him to process fake accident reports. An office manager named Linda Chen detailed how Fletcher threatened to fire her entire family if she didn't provide him with employee passwords. How did Sarah get these people to talk? I asked. She approached them as victims, not criminals, Douglas explained. Sarah understood that Fletcher was blackmailing and intimidating his accomplices. She offered them protection in exchange for cooperation. One recording particularly chilled me. Fletcher's secretary, Carol Martinez, described how Fletcher monitored employee activities and collected personal information to use as leverage. He knows about everyone's mistakes. Carol's voice trembled on the recording. Who's behind on child support? Who has gambling problems? Who's having affairs? He uses that information to control people. Conway Morrison is different, though. Mr. Fletcher hates him for personal reasons. Sarah's investigation had uncovered Fletcher's entire criminal network. He hadn't just embezzled money, he had created a climate of fear and manipulation that trapped dozens of innocent employees in his schemes. Look at this, Douglas said, holding up a thick document. Sarah traced the money Fletcher stole. $3.2 million over 8 years hidden in accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. Sarah had even discovered Fletcher's exit strategy. Plane tickets to Grand Cayman, a new identity complete with passport and credit cards, and a house purchase agreement for a beachfront property where extradition would be difficult. When is he planning to disappear? I asked. According to this timeline, Fletcher triggers the audit on Monday morning. By Wednesday, when investigators focus on you as the primary suspect, he'll be on a plane to the Caribbean. I studied Sarah's final notes written in the days before her death. Her handwriting became increasingly urgent as she realized how little time remained. He's moved up his timeline, I read aloud. Original plan called for 6 more months of preparation, but he's becoming paranoid about security. Suspects someone is investigating him. Must accelerate evidence gathering. Douglas found Sarah's psychological analysis of Fletcher. She had studied him like a scientist examining a dangerous specimen. Subject shows classic signs of narcissistic personality disorder combined with obsessive-compulsive tendencies. I read from Sarah's report. His need for control and perfectionism will be his downfall. He cannot resist explaining his superiority to those he perceives as inferior. Recommend using this arrogance against him. Sarah had planned every detail of how to expose Fletcher. She knew exactly which psychological buttons to push to make him confess. There's more, Douglas said, pulling out a sealed envelope marked Emergency Contact Information. Inside was Victoria Hartwell's personal cell phone number and a note. Victoria has agreed to provide legal representation and coordinate with federal authorities. She is the only person outside our agency who knows the complete truth. I stared at Victoria's number. My college girlfriend had become my wife's secret ally in a battle I didn't even know was being fought. Douglas found Sarah's communication logs with Victoria. They had been in regular contact for months, coordinating the investigation and planning the legal strategy to expose Fletcher. Victoria was prepared to arrest Fletcher herself if necessary. Douglas said, reading through their correspondence. She has contacts in the FBI's Financial Crimes Division who were standing by to act on Sarah's evidence. The scope of Sarah's planning amazed me. She had anticipated every possible obstacle and developed contingencies for each scenario. She had even prepared for the possibility that Fletcher might discover her investigation and try to silence her. "What's this?" I asked, finding a folder marked "Immediate Action Required." Inside were instructions for what to do if Sarah died before completing the case. The plan was detailed and precise, leaving nothing to chance. Step 1. Conway must return to work and act normally to avoid arousing Fletcher's suspicion. Step 2. Douglas contacts Victoria to activate FBI surveillance. Step 3. Conway wears recording equipment to document Fletcher's confession. Step 4. Federal authorities arrest Fletcher and his accomplices simultaneously. Sarah had even anticipated my emotional state. A personal letter addressed to me was clipped to the action plan. "My dearest Conway, if you're reading this, then I've failed to protect you from Fletcher's final attack. Please don't blame yourself for not knowing about my work. I chose to keep you safe by keeping you uninformed. Now you must be strong and finish what we started together. Fletcher's arrogance will be his downfall. He cannot resist gloating when he believes he has won. Use that weakness against him. Trust Douglas and Victoria completely. They are fighting for you as hard as I was. Remember that everything I did because I love you more than my own life. Make Fletcher pay for what he did to us both. Sarah." Reading my wife's final words to me, I felt a transformation I couldn't have imagined 3 days earlier. The confused, grieving widower was gone, replaced by someone harder and more determined. Sarah had died protecting me. Now I would live to avenge her. "When do we start?" I asked Douglas. "Victoria's flying in tonight. We meet at 6 tomorrow morning to finalize the plan. Monday you go back to work wearing a wire. We'll have one chance to get Fletcher's confession before he disappears forever." I looked at the mountain of evidence Sarah had assembled through months of dangerous, solitary work. She had built an unbreakable case against Fletcher, but she had died before she could see justice served. "Sarah left one more thing," Douglas said, handing me a small velvet box. Inside was a pendant shaped like a heart with an inscription, "For Conway, my partner in everything. Love never dies." The pendant had been Sarah's grandmother's, a family heirloom I had admired, but she had never worn. Now I understood why. She had been saving it for this moment, knowing I would need something tangible to remind me of her love when facing the most dangerous challenge of my life. I fastened the pendant around my neck, feeling its weight against my chest like Sarah's hand on my heart. Fletcher thought he had won by silencing my wife. He was about to learn that Sarah Morrison had planned for victory even beyond death. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold, with October rain drumming against the windows of Douglas's office. Victoria Hartwell sat across from me, and I barely recognized the college girlfriend I had once known. At 34, she had transformed from an uncertain undergraduate into a formidable attorney whose reputation for destroying corrupt corporations was legendary in Chicago legal circles. "Conway," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding courtrooms. "I'm sorry about Sarah. She was an extraordinary woman." Victoria's appearance was striking, but professional. Sharp black business suit hair pulled back, severely minimal jewelry, except for a law school ring that probably cost more than my car. The idealistic girl who used to wear flowery dresses and discuss changing the world had evolved into someone who actually did change the world, one criminal conviction at a time. "Why did you help us?" I asked. "After all these years, why did you care what happened to me?" Victoria's expression softened slightly. "Because Sarah convinced me that good people deserve protection from predators like Fletcher, and because I never stopped caring about your happiness even after we went our separate ways." Douglas spread Fletcher's complete file across the conference table. "Victoria has been coordinating with FBI agent Janet Ross from the Financial Crimes Division. They're prepared to move as soon as we get Fletcher's confession." "The evidence Sarah gathered is substantial," Victoria said, reviewing the documents. "But we need Fletcher to admit his crimes on tape to guarantee a conviction. Without his confession, a smart defense attorney might create reasonable doubt about whether he acted alone." Agent Ross joined us through a video conference call. She was a stern woman in her 40s with graying hair and eyes that had seen too many financial criminals escape justice. "Mr. Morrison," Agent Ross said through the laptop screen, "we've been investigating Fletcher for 6 months based on Sarah's preliminary evidence. She was building the strongest case against corporate embezzlement we've seen in a decade." The scope of the federal investigation surprised me. Sarah hadn't just been gathering evidence. She had been coordinating with multiple law enforcement agencies to ensure Fletcher faced justice for every crime he committed. "Fletcher's operation extends beyond your insurance company," Agent Ross continued. "He's been running similar schemes at 3 other firms across the Midwest. We estimate total damages exceed $12 million. Douglas showed me the recording equipment I would wear Monday morning. A tiny microphone disguised as a button on my shirt connected to a digital recorder smaller than a credit card. Fletcher's psychological profile suggests he'll confess if he believes he's won," Victoria said. "Sarah's notes indicate he's been waiting 15 years for this moment. He'll want to savor his victory by explaining exactly how he destroyed you." We rehearsed the conversation I would have with Fletcher. I needed to appear defeated and confused, giving him the opportunity to gloat about his superior planning. Sarah's psychological analysis provided the exact phrases and emotional triggers that would prompt Fletcher to reveal his crimes. "He craves recognition for his intelligence," Victoria read from Sarah's notes. "Fletcher believes he's smarter than everyone around him. Appealed to his ego by expressing amazement at his elaborate scheme." The plan was dangerous, but straightforward. Monday morning, I would arrive at work early and request a private meeting with Fletcher to discuss the pending audit. Once alone in his office, I would gradually reveal my knowledge of the embezzlement, forcing Fletcher to choose between denial and confession. Sarah's psychological profile predicted he would choose confession, unable to resist claiming credit for his masterpiece of revenge. "What if he becomes violent?" I asked. "FBI agents will be positioned throughout the building," Agent Ross assured me. "At the first sign of danger, they'll intervene." Victoria pulled out additional documents I hadn't seen before. Sarah also discovered evidence that Fletcher murdered his own wife 12 years ago. She found discrepancies in the insurance claim and witness testimony that suggest he staged her accident to collect life insurance money. The revelation stunned me. Fletcher hadn't just framed innocent employees for embezzlement. He was a serial killer who had been operating for over a decade. Mrs. Fletcher's death provided the seed money for his embezzlement operation. Victoria continued. $700,000 in life insurance gave him the capital to begin manipulating claims and bribing accomplices. Sarah's investigation had uncovered a monster hiding in plain sight. Fletcher had spent years perfecting his methods on smaller victims before targeting me for his ultimate revenge. "There's something else," Douglas said quietly. "Sarah's final notes suggest Fletcher has been planning to kill you after the audit exposes the embezzlement. He wants you to suffer the humiliation of arrest and prosecution before he eliminates you permanently." The coldness of Fletcher's plan chilled me to the bone. He hadn't simply wanted to frame me for his crimes. He had wanted to torture me psychologically before ending my life. "Sarah knew about the murder plot," Victoria said. "That's why she accelerated her timeline. She was racing to expose Fletcher before he could complete his revenge." I touched the pendant Sarah had left me, drawing strength from the tangible reminder of her love. She had literally died trying to save my life. Now I had the chance to honor her sacrifice by finishing the fight she had started. "Monday morning we end this," I said. Agent Ross nodded through the video screen. "Fletcher's reign of terror ends Monday. We'll be ready." Victoria handed me her personal cell phone number. "If anything goes wrong, if you feel threatened in any way, call me immediately. I'll have federal marshals in the building within minutes." Douglas reviewed the final details of Sarah's plan. She predicted that Fletcher would confess completely once he realized the investigation was over. His arrogance won't allow him to take credit for only part of his scheme. He'll want you to know exactly how brilliant he believes himself to be. I spent the rest of Saturday reading Sarah's complete psychological analysis of Fletcher. She had studied him like a detective novelist studying a villain, understanding his motivations, and predicting his behavior with uncanny accuracy. Sunday evening, I sat in our empty house holding Sarah's final letter and preparing mentally for the confrontation that would determine whether justice prevailed or Fletcher escaped to enjoy his stolen millions. The pendant felt warm against my chest as I made a promise to my deceased wife. Tomorrow, Raymond Fletcher would pay for every crime he had committed, every life he had destroyed, and every tear Sarah had shed trying to protect the people she loved. Fletcher thought he had won by silencing Sarah. He was about to discover that love is stronger than death, and justice delayed is not justice denied. Monday morning arrived with crystalline clarity, as if the universe had swept away all distractions to focus on this single moment of reckoning. I dressed carefully, fastening the recording device Douglas had given me and checking the microphone concealed in my shirt button. Sarah's pendant hung beneath my tie, a constant reminder of why I was about to confront a killer. The office building felt different as I walked through the lobby at 7:30. FBI agents disguised as maintenance workers and security guards nodded slightly as I passed their presence, both reassuring and terrifying. Agent Ross's voice crackled through the tiny earpiece hidden beneath my hair. "We're in position, Conway. Fletcher arrived 20 minutes ago. He's alone in his office." I took the elevator to the 5th floor, my heart pounding so hard I worried the microphone would pick up only my pulse. Fletcher's corner office overlooked downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city he had been systematically robbing for 8 years. I knocked on his doorframe. Fletcher looked up from his computer, his expression shifting from surprise to something that might have been anticipation. "Conway, I wasn't expecting you this early. How are you holding up after Sarah's funeral?" His false sympathy made my skin crawl. This man had murdered my wife, then attended her funeral to offer his condolences. The acting ability required for such cruelty was beyond my comprehension. "Actually, Ray, that's why I'm here. I've been going through Sarah's things and I found some documents I don't understand. Could we talk privately?" Fletcher's eyes sharpened with interest. "Of course. Close the door." I shut the door and took a seat across from Fletcher's mahogany desk. He leaned back in his executive chair, fingers steepled, watching me with the intensity of a predator evaluating prey. "What kind of documents?" he asked. I pulled out photocopies of the bank statements Douglas had given me, but not the complete investigation files. Sarah's plan required me to reveal my knowledge, gradually allowing Fletcher to believe he controlled the conversation. Bank statements showing large cash deposits Sarah made every week for years. I never knew she had this much money. Fletcher's expression didn't change, but I caught a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. "How much money are we talking about?" "Over $1 million. Ray, I'm scared. The FBI is auditing our company this morning, and I'm worried these deposits might look suspicious. Like maybe Sarah was involved in something illegal." Fletcher smiled, a cold expression that transformed his familiar features into something reptilian. "Conway, I think you and I need to have a very honest conversation about your situation." "My situation?" "The audit that starts this morning is specifically targeting you. The federal investigators have evidence that you've been embezzling money from insurance claims for years." I forced myself to look shocked and confused. "That's impossible. I've never stolen anything in my life." "The evidence says otherwise." Fletcher opened his desk drawer and pulled out a thick folder. "Forged signatures on claim authorizations, fraudulent payments to fake accident victims, offshore bank accounts opened in your name. The FBI has been building a case against you for months." His performance was masterful. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed his concerned employer act completely. "Ray, you've known me for 15 years. You hired me straight out of college. Do you really think I'm capable of embezzlement?" Fletcher leaned forward, his mask of concern slipping slightly. "Conway, I think you're capable of much more than most people realize. Your wife certainly was." "What do you mean?" "Sarah was a very resourceful woman, much more clever than she appeared. It's a shame she won't be around to face the consequences of her choices." The casual cruelty of his words ignited a rage I struggled to control. Fletcher was talking about murdering my wife as if discussing the weather. I don't understand what you're implying about Sarah. Fletcher stood and walked to his window, gazing out at the city with the satisfaction of a conqueror surveying his domain. Conway, do you remember Emma Fletcher? The shift in topic caught me off guard, even though Sarah's notes had predicted he would eventually reveal his true motivation. Emma was your daughter. She died in high school. She died because of you. Fletcher's voice hardened. My beautiful, innocent daughter drove off a bridge because you broke her heart. Ray, that was 15 years ago. Emma's death was a tragic accident. Fletcher spun around, his composure finally cracking. Accident. You destroyed the most precious thing in my life, and you call it an accident. I was 18 years old. I didn't know she would react that way to our breakup. You didn't care how she would react. You used her and discarded her when someone more convenient came along. Fletcher walked back to his desk, his movements controlled but dangerous. I've spent 15 years planning the perfect revenge. Not just destroying you, but making you suffer the way you made Emma suffer. Agent Ross's voice whispered in my earpiece, he's confessing. Keep him talking. Ray, I never meant to hurt Emma. I was just a kid making stupid decisions. You were old enough to understand consequences, just like you're old enough to understand them now. Fletcher opened another drawer and pulled out a photo of Emma from their high school yearbook. She was smiling, young and hopeful, with no idea her life would end in just a few months. I hired you specifically so I could destroy you when the time was right. I watched you build a life, get married, become happy, and then I began taking it all away, piece by piece. You've been planning this since you hired me. Fletcher's smile returned cold and triumphant. I've been planning this since Emma's funeral when I watched you sitting in the back of the church like a coward. But I needed to be patient. Revenge isn't meaningful unless the victim has something valuable to lose. The embezzlement. You've been framing me. For 8 years, I've been building an unbreakable case against you. Every fraudulent claim processed with your authorization. Every forged signature in your handwriting. Every payment to fictional accident victims using your employee credentials. Fletcher pulled out a laptop and turned the screen toward me. $12 million stolen from this company and 2 others, all traced directly to accounts opened in your name with your forged signatures. But I never opened any accounts. Of course not. I opened them for you. Just like I processed all those fraudulent claims for you. Just like I'll testify that you confessed your crimes to me when the pressure became too much. The scope of his planning was staggering. Fletcher had spent 8 years methodically constructing a fictional version of my life where I was a master criminal. The FBI will believe your story, you so. Fletcher laughed, a sound devoid of any warmth. Conway, by tomorrow morning, you'll be in federal custody facing charges that could put you in prison for 30 years. By the end of the week, I'll be in the Cayman Islands enjoying the retirement your stolen money will provide. What about Sarah? How did she fit into your plan? Fletcher's expression darkened. Your wife was smarter than either of us anticipated. She discovered my operation and began investigating me. I couldn't allow her to interfere with 15 years of planning. You killed her. I removed an obstacle. Sarah was going to destroy everything I had worked for. I couldn't let one woman's meddling protect you from the justice Emma deserved. Fletcher described Sarah's murder with the detached tone of someone discussing a business decision. Heart medication mixed with stimulants. Untraceable and designed to look like natural causes. Your wife died thinking she was protecting you, never realizing she was already too late. My hands clenched into fists beneath the desk. Fletcher had poisoned my wife, then attended her funeral to comfort me in my grief. The beautiful irony, Fletcher continued, is that Sarah's detective work actually helped me perfect the evidence against you. She documented your activities so thoroughly that I was able to identify the few gaps in my frame-up. You used her investigation against me. I used everything against you, your wife's love, her intelligence, her determination to save you. All of it served my purpose. In the end. Fletcher checked his watch. The FBI agents should be arriving any minute now. They'll find you here confused and desperate, asking me to help you understand how you could have committed crimes you don't remember. And you'll tell them I confessed? I'll tell them you broke down and admitted everything. A man driven to embezzlement by gambling debts and a wife who spent money faster than you could steal it. Fletcher's plan was diabolical in its completeness. He had anticipated every possible defense and prepared evidence to counter it. Ray, please. I know you blame me for Emma's death, but destroying my life won't bring her back. Fletcher's smile vanished, replaced by raw hatred. Nothing will bring Emma back, but watching you lose everything that matters to you the way I lost everything that mattered to me will provide a satisfaction I've dreamed about for 15 years. He leaned across the desk, his voice dropping to a whisper. You killed my daughter Conway. Now I've killed your wife. We're even. Agent Ross's voice crackled urgently in my earpiece. We have everything we need. FBI is moving in now. I heard footsteps in the hallway outside Fletcher's office. He heard them too, his expression shifting from triumph to confusion. Conway, I want you to remember this moment, Fletcher said, oblivious to the approaching agents. I want you to remember that Raymond Fletcher was smarter than you, stronger than you, and more patient than you ever imagined possible. The door burst open, and 3 FBI agents in tactical gear stormed into the office with weapons drawn. Raymond Fletcher, you're under arrest for murder, embezzlement, conspiracy, and federal racketeering charges. Fletcher's face went white as Agent Ross entered behind her tactical team. Conway Morrison has been working as an undercover operative for the FBI. Everything you just confessed has been recorded and will be used against you in federal court. I stood up, removing the microphone from my shirt and the earpiece from my ear. Fletcher stared at me as if I had transformed into someone completely different. You're working for the FBI. I'm working for Sarah, I said. She spent months building the case that just destroyed you. Her investigation provided all the evidence the FBI needed to prove your crimes. As Agent Ross handcuffed Fletcher, I pulled out Sarah's pendant and held it where he could see it. My wife was 10 times smarter than you ever were, Ray. She anticipated every move you made and planned for every contingency. Sarah Morrison destroyed you from beyond the grave. Fletcher's composure finally shattered completely. This is impossible. I planned for everything. I couldn't have missed something this important. You missed the one thing you never understood, I said. Love. Sarah loved me enough to die protecting me, and that love was stronger than all your hatred and planning. As FBI agents led Fletcher from his office in handcuffs, he looked back at me with pure bewilderment. How did she know? How could she have known? Because she was protecting someone she loved, I answered, and you were destroying someone you hated. Love is always smarter than hate. The man who had murdered my wife and tried to destroy my life was finally facing justice. Sarah's brilliant, patient-loving plan had worked exactly as she designed it. Fletcher's 15 years of planning had been defeated by 8 months of a woman's love. The federal courthouse in downtown Columbus buzzed with activity as Raymond Fletcher's trial began 6 months later. I sat in the front row of the gallery wearing Sarah's pendant beneath my shirt and holding the hand of Douglas Reed, who had become not just my business partner, but one of my closest friends. Victoria Hartwell commanded the courtroom as the lead federal prosecutor, her opening statement delivered with the precision of a surgeon and the passion of someone fighting for justice itself. She outlined Fletcher's crimes methodically. The murder of his wife 12 years ago, the systematic embezzlement of over $12 million from 4 different insurance companies, the intimidation and blackmail of dozens of employees, and finally the murder of Sarah Morrison. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Victoria said, her voice carrying across the silent courtroom, you will hear evidence of a conspiracy so elaborate and cruel that it challenges our basic assumptions about human nature. The defendant didn't simply steal money. He weaponized grief, turning the accidental death of his daughter into a justification for 15 years of calculated evil. Fletcher's defense attorney, an expensive lawyer from Cincinnati, attempted to portray his client as a grieving father, driven to temporary insanity by the loss of his child. But Sarah's meticulous documentation made that defense impossible. Her investigation had uncovered not just the crimes Fletcher committed against me, but a pattern of criminal behavior stretching back over a decade. Agent Ross testified about the offshore bank accounts, the forged documents, the network of accomplices Fletcher had coerced into participating in his schemes. Each piece of evidence Sarah had gathered was presented to the jury, building an unbreakable case for conviction. On the third day of testimony, Victoria called me to the witness stand. I looked directly at Fletcher as I described discovering Sarah's secret life as a private investigator, learning about his frame-up scheme, and finally confronting him in his office while wearing FBI recording equipment. "Mr. Morrison," Victoria asked, "what motivated you to participate in such a dangerous operation?" "My wife died trying to protect me from Raymond Fletcher," I answered. "The least I could do was help finish the fight she started." Fletcher stared at me throughout my testimony, his expression shifting between hatred and bewilderment. I think he genuinely couldn't understand how his perfect plan had been defeated by a part-time librarian with no formal law enforcement training. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning with guilty verdicts on all charges. Fletcher was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole for the murders of his wife and Sarah, plus an additional 45 years for the financial crimes. As Fletcher was led away in shackles, he looked back at me one final time. I touched Sarah's pendant through my shirt and mouthed the words, "She won." After the trial, I drove to Riverside Cemetery and knelt beside Sarah's gravestone. The inscription read simply, "Sarah Elizabeth Morrison, beloved wife and protector. She fought for love." "It's over," I told her. "Fletcher will spend the rest of his life in prison. He'll never hurt anyone else the way he hurt us." I placed fresh daisies on her grave, the flowers she had always preferred over roses, because they were honest and unpretentious. The spring afternoon was warm and peaceful, with birds singing in the oak trees that surrounded the cemetery. "I have something to tell you," I continued. "Douglas and I are continuing your detective agency. We renamed it Morrison and Associates, and we're specializing in the kind of cases you loved most, helping people who are being victimized by those who think they're too powerful to face consequences." The agency had grown beyond anything Sarah could have imagined. Her reputation for integrity and effectiveness had attracted clients from across the Midwest, and Douglas and I struggled to keep up with the demand for our services. "Victoria has joined us as our legal counsel," I said. "She's taking a leave of absence from her Chicago firm to help us build something that would make you proud." Victoria and I had rekindled our friendship during the trial, bonding over our shared commitment to honoring Sarah's memory through our work. There was no romance between us, but there was deep respect and affection built on our mutual love for the woman who had brought us together. "I've also started teaching classes at the community college," I told Sarah's gravestone. "Investigation techniques for people who want to help their communities. I'm passing on everything you taught Douglas and everything he's teaching me." The classes had become surprisingly popular, attracting retired police officers, social workers, and ordinary citizens who wanted to make a difference in their neighborhoods. Sarah's methods of building trust and encouraging honesty had proven as effective in community organizing as they were in private investigation. "Most importantly, I want you to know that I finally understand what you were trying to teach me. Love isn't just about the good times and easy choices. Real love means protecting someone even when they can't see the danger. Even when they might not understand your methods, even when it requires sacrifice they'll never know about." I touched the pendant through my shirt, feeling its familiar weight against my heart. "You saved my life, Sarah. Not just from Fletcher's frame-up, but from a smaller, less meaningful existence. You showed me what it looks like to fight for something bigger than yourself. I promise to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the love you gave me." A gentle breeze rustled the oak leaves overhead, and for just a moment I could almost feel Sarah's presence beside me. Not the mysterious private investigator I had discovered after her death, but the gentle librarian who made me coffee every morning and kissed my cheek every Thursday before leaving to protect people she would never meet. 6 months later, I received a letter from Fletcher in prison. He wanted to apologize to explain his actions to somehow make peace with the man whose life he had tried to destroy. I read the first paragraph, then threw the letter away without finishing it. Fletcher's apology was meaningless. The only opinion that mattered was Sarah's, and she had already rendered her judgment by spending the last months of her life building the case that brought him to justice. Every Thursday at 2 p.m., I place fresh flowers on Sarah's desk at Morrison and Associates and spend a few minutes reading her notes from active cases. Her insights continue to guide our work. Her methods continue to solve our most difficult investigations. The Thursday routine that once mystified me has become the most important part of my week. Not because I'm trying to solve the mystery of Sarah's secret anymore, but because I'm trying to continue the work that gave her life meaning. Sarah Morrison taught me that love is not passive. Real love fights. Real love protects. Real love sacrifices for the good of others, even when those others never know the battle was fought on their behalf. Fletcher spent 15 years planning his perfect revenge, but he never understood the most important truth about love and hatred. Love builds while hatred only destroys. Sarah built a legacy that continues to protect innocent people long after her death. Fletcher built nothing but a prison cell that will confine him until he dies. In the end, the grieving father who thought he was smarter than everyone else was outsmarted by a small-town librarian whose only advantage was that she fought for love instead of revenge. Sarah's greatest victory wasn't exposing Fletcher's crimes or saving my life. Her greatest victory was showing me that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things when they fight for the right reasons. Every morning when I wake up alone, I touch Sarah's pendant and remember that I'm not really alone. I carry her love, her wisdom, and her determination with me everywhere I go. Fletcher took away my wife, but he couldn't take away the lesson she died teaching me. Love is the most powerful force in the universe, stronger than hatred, smarter than revenge, and more patient than any scheme devised by those who choose darkness over light. That's the lesson Sarah Morrison lived for, died for, and continues to teach everyone whose life she touches through the work we continue in her name. Have you ever discovered that someone you thought you knew completely had been protecting you in ways you never imagined? Love sometimes works in mysterious ways, doesn't it? Sarah's story shows us that the people who truly care about us might be fighting battles on our behalf that we never see. I'd love to hear about a time when you realized someone had been looking out for you in ways you didn't know. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you the way Sarah's love moved everyone who knew her, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Sarah believed that sharing stories of love triumphing over evil could inspire others to fight for what's right in their own lives. Share this story with someone who might need to remember that love is stronger than any force trying to tear us down. Sometimes we all need to be reminded that there are people fighting for us even when we can't see the battle. Thank you for joining me in honoring Sarah Morrison's memory and celebrating the truth that love really can conquer all. I hope her story gives you the same strength and hope it continues to give me every single day. Until next time, remember that love never truly dies, and the best way to honor those we've lost is to continue the fight they started.